Long-term subscribers of the channel may remember that last season I had said that my Uncle Jeff had unfortunately passed away. Now, he was a massive Wolverhampton Wanderers fan, and a few months before he passed away, he told me a story, and that story is one that I want to share with you guys today, and that is the story of how Wolverhampton Wanderers, in a sense, created the Champions League.
The Champions League is the creme de la creme of club football, and a competition that every player dreams of winning in their career. Only the elite few managed to get their hands on the trophy, with even some of the finest players the sport has ever seen never managing to win it during their careers. For a team to get their hands on this trophy, it's a statement. Unless you're Real Madrid, then it's just routine. But for the players and fans, it means everything, with winning the competition a symbol of being crowned the greatest team in Europe. It's a tournament that's given us some of the greatest nights in footballing history. Moments like Chelsea's heroics at the Nou Camp in the semi-finals, followed by the underdog victory against Bayern in the final. Liverpool's legendary comeback against AC Milan from 3-0 down at half-time in Istanbul. Porto's Champions League win against all the odds under Jose Mourinho, as well as some of the most iconic goals we've ever seen. It's a competition for the best in Europe, and one that we all recognise as such. But this story takes us all the way back to the very thought of a competition that would bring us so much magic.
Now, this story takes place in the 1950s, so we're going to have to cast our minds back a bit. The Molineux Stadium behind me was one of the first stadiums in the country to have floodlights. So as a result of this, Wolverhampton Wanderers being one of the best teams in the country. In fact, Wolverhampton Wanderers had actually won the Premier League, or as it was known back then, Division 1 title, only the season before. And meanwhile, over in Budapest, you had another European giant going by the name of Budapest Honvéd, who had, as my Uncle Jeff would describe him, one of the greatest players of all time, and I think that's pretty hard to dispute, in Puskás.
Ferenc Puskás is well known, of course, for his time at Real Madrid, where he won 3 Champions League titles with the club after it was formed. But prior to his 8-year stint with Los Blancos, Puskás made 350 appearances for Budapest Honvéd, scoring 358 goals in 11 years in his time in Hungary. Today, he is one of only 7 players to have averaged over a goal a game. In 1954, he was part of a Honvéd side who had just won their 4th league title in 6 years, under the stewardship of Geno Kalmar, and playing alongside future Barcelona stars Zoltan Čizbor and Sandor Kocsis. Wolves, as previously mentioned, the reigning champions of England at this time, after their first ever Division 1 title was secured under the guidance of their legendary manager Stan Cullis. Their team boasted the likes of England captain Billy Wright, as well as Dennis Wilshaw, Johnny Hancocks and Roy Swinburne, the latter 3 of which all registered over 20 goals during that title-winning season. So with both teams at the peak of their powers nationally, decisions were made to test this dominance further.
So what Wolves decided to do was to arrange a series of friendlies in which they called the Floodlight Friendlies, of course being one of the first stadiums to actually have floodlights in the country, and these friendlies were shown on the BBC. In these games, they took on European teams in an attempt to essentially just show off their new stadium, show off their new floodlights, and take on some European teams, which didn't really happen at this point. Honvéd, on the other hand, decided to go and take on the Americas. So we're talking South American teams, we're talking possibly, actually I don't even know if American teams were going then, I'll have to do my research on that. But both clubs independently went about their way to organise some friendlies, and between the 10 games that these two sides played, only 1 game was lost, and it was Honvéd who actually lost that game.
With their floodlit friendlies scheduled over the course of the autumn and Christmas period of the 1954 season, Wolves first hosted West Brom in the Charity Shield, ending in a 4-4 draw and seeing the trophy shared between the bitter rivals for only the 2nd time in the competition's history. As well as beating South Africa 3-1 and Celtic 2-0 the year before, following the West Brom draw, Wolves earned a 3-1 win against Racing Club of Buenos Aires, as well as a 10-0 hammering of Maccabi Tel Aviv and a 4-0 thrashing of Spartak Moscow. The only side who avoided defeat in Wolves' series of friendlies was First Vienna, who played out a 0-0 draw. These friendlies had seen foreign football capture the curiosity of journalists and football fans alike, from intrigue in their pre-match warm-ups to the reaction of their backroom staff, and the whole concept seemed alien. Honvéd's friendlies, however, were less publicised and couldn't be found anywhere online, so for that piece of information, you'll just have to trust that Uncle Jeff knew what he was on about.
Now, after these games had been been played, it was put forward to both clubs about the possibility of playing a friendly between both sides to see who was the best club in the world. And that's exactly what they did. Right in the Molineux behind me, once again, the game was shown live on the BBC as well as in front of 55,000 spectators. Wolverhampton Wanderers took on Budapest Honvéd in an attempt to see who was the best club in Europe.
On December the 13th, 1954, the stage was set. The best team in Europe had made the trip to face the best team in England, and with Hungary having twice beaten England at international level, including the infamous 6-3 match of the century at Wembley, the stakes for this game reached far beyond club level. Upon their arrival, Honvéd's team were treated like celebrities, being hounded for autographs, and their talented squad then becoming household names. Just 14 minutes into the match and Honvéd were 2-0 up, with Coxis and Fenrik Makos giving the visitors a comfortable lead by half-time. But during this break, a dirty tactic was used by Wolves to muddy the Molineux pitch, as they poured water across the playing surface to make it boggy and more difficult for the Honvéd players to execute their quick passing play. As a result, Honvéd's passes became more disrupted, with the ball repeatedly stuck in the mud, giving Wolves a way back into the game. In the 49th minute, Johnny Hancock's pulled a goal back for Wolves from the penalty spot, and with 15 minutes to go, Roy Swinburne headed home to find an equaliser, sending the Wolves fans into raptures. It took Swinburne just 2 minutes to find his second of the night and put Wolves into a 3-2 lead, and when the full-time whistle went, the flood-lit Molineux could be heard for miles. It was the Birmingham Gazette publishing the headline, "Wolves Champions of the World," the next day that sparked the debate of whether or not this was English arrogance or if a fairer method could be used to determine a European champion. French journalist Gabriel Hanot published an article in L'Equipe that read, "Before we declare that Wolverhampton are invincible, let them go to Moscow and Budapest. And there are other internationally renowned clubs, Milan and Real Madrid to name but two. A club world championship, or at least a European one, larger, more meaningful and more prestigious than the Mitropa Cup, and more original than a competition for national teams, should be launched." And thus the ball was rolling. Just half a year later, at the start of the 1955-56 season, the first edition of the European Cup began, with neither Wolverhampton Wanderers or Honvéd involved. Furthermore, neither side has ever won European football's most coveted trophy, but it is without a doubt that the drama and the excitement that spawned from that night at the Molineux is one that has set the tone for all of those glorious years that followed.
So from 2 goals down to eventually turn it round and win it 3-2, the friendly that dubbed Wolves the champions of Europe is unfortunately the only time that any Wolves fan would have ever heard that said about their club, because despite playing in European competitions, even as recently as 2020 with the Europa League where they reached the quarter-finals, Wolves have never won any European silverware. But what they do have is some bragging rights over arguably winning the first ever Champions League. Is it somewhat similar to like when West Ham fans say that they're the team that won the World Cup back in 1966? Maybe a little bit. But it is without question an intriguing bit of trivia, and one that I certainly found interesting to research, so much so that I thought it's worth sharing with you guys. But ladies and gentlemen, if you have enjoyed, please let me know down in the comments, and if you've got any quirky, interesting stories similar to the one that we've covered today, let me know. But for now, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching as always. That one's for you, Uncle Jeff. See you guys in the next one. Take care, peace and love.